Doctors of Reddit. What's your how are you even alive story? Story 1. One time I had a patient who was walking in the street, got hit by a car, thrown into oncoming traffic, bounced off another car, and then got pinned under a third. Or so the EMS report said. He had a dislocated shoulder and a non-displaced femur fracture. He was on that white powder, illegal stuff, which probably explained how he was able to scream at the trauma team to leave him alone. Opinion. Well, as people say, screaming is a good sign. The ones who aren't gonna make it don't have the energy to scream. It's amazing that doctors could patch him back up after that. Story 2. I had this patient before medical school when I was an EMT, and he still sticks with me. 20-something-year-old male. Motorcycle versus SUV. SUV 1. We arrived on scene to a man face down in a pool of blood, approximately 1 liter. We were told he was wearing a helmet, but it was nowhere to be found. He was about 30 feet from his bike and there was a clear trail of blood leading to the bike because he wasn't wearing leather. We rode him onto the board and that was the first beating heart I ever saw. His road rash was so bad it eroded his chest wall and we were staring at his heart, a collapsed lung, his great vessels, and the branches of the brachial plexus. Amazingly, they were all intact. Of course, he had multiple injuries to his other extremities. Mandible, zygomatic arches, etc. But we frankly didn't care at the time. We were on scene for no more than 2 minutes before we sped off to the trauma center. I remember transferring the patient to the chief of trauma surgery, whose first words when the trauma pad was removed were, "Oh my god, I thought for sure he was a goner." Fast forward 2 years when I was at my primary care physician's office for a checkup after my medical school interview and saw a collection bin for a veteran's wedding. Guess who? Yup, it was him. They had taken his left arm to reconstruct his chest, since the nerves were gone and he recovered. Opinion. I guess an arm is a small price to pay to keep your life. Story 3. When I was in trauma surgery upstate, I got a notification about a man who was hit with a long-distance hole puncher 3 times in the head. He comes in, literally one eye hanging out of the socket, blood everywhere, and he slumped forward. Apparently, he was hit in the temple, which exited out of his right eye socket, in the nose, exited from the roof of the mouth, and in the cheek, which exited from the side of the head. At this point, I think they just brought him in so we can pronounce him in the ER, because he looked gone. I go to examine him and tilt his head back, and he says, "Yo, be gentle." I jumped back and screamed like a little boy, as did everyone in the room. Literally, the piercing objects missed his brain in every single opinion. Yo, be gentle, that's so metal, lol. Story 4. Not a doctor, but this is what I have been told repeatedly when I was in the hospital for my open heart surgery. How are you even still alive? Backstory. I basically was born with a congenital birth defect, which has an extremely high unaliving rate, like 1 in 120 million of it happening, and about a 95% to 99% chance of not surviving. Not only did I survive it for 20 years, I played lacrosse for 4 years. Now the issue was that I was missing a major blood vessel in my heart that is required to pump blood. My body compensated in such an extreme way that the blood vessel on the right side of the heart went down and around the heart and attached itself to the aorta. My heart was basically circulating blood around itself and the rest of my body didn't get enough of it. So how was it found out? Blew my nose and full-on heart attack. Surgeons repeatedly stated and asked, how was I alive? And you played lacrosse for 4 years? Also, the main surgeon stated that anyone with this condition usually does not survive birth. They only know of the condition from autopsies. I blew my nose, had a heart attack, found out birth defect. All doctors are baffled. I have medical journals of my condition. Edit 1. I, for the life of me, cannot remember what my condition was called. I will make a call Monday to my cardiologist to find the name, so be prepared to be updated on the name. Edit 2. I just got off the phone with my cardiologist nurse. It is called anomalous left anterior descending artery. Now time to find the journals. Opinion. Was it like a really big sneeze, or does every time you pick up a tissue, you feel like it could be your time? Story 5. My friend's father is an orthopedic surgeon, and he told us a story that once a boyfriend and girlfriend came in because they tried an in-home baby ending by running her pelvis over with a car. It worked, but I hope they actually never reproduce. Opinion. Well, that's enough Reddit for tonight. Story 6. We have a patient we see at our hospital monthly. Young guy in his early 20s, an absolute pain in the neck to take care of. He has diabetes and essentially refuses to take his insulin. He comes in every time with diabetic ketoacidosis, which is essentially your body going into a coma-like state due to your blood pH becoming acidotic and very elevated sugars. The impressive part isn't that he survives this. Most people do. It's that this is a recurring event every month. And each time someone manages to find him or get him to the hospital. If he was ever alone when this occurred and no one found him in a timely fashion, he'd be toast. Been seeing him regularly at the hospital for the last 18 months I've been there. Opinion. Unfortunately, a young adult refusing to handle their diabetes. It's not nearly a unique occurrence. It adds a lot of stress onto an already very stressful time in life, and it can sometimes seem easier to ignore it and hope it doesn't end you. Story 7. Anesthesiologist here. I once had a 20-something-year-old Jehovah's Witness as a patient who kept bleeding and bleeding after childbirth. Because of her religion, she refused blood transfusions. After other measures failed, we finally took her to the operating room for an emergency hysterectomy that saved her life. In a pregnant woman, the normal hemoglobin, the protein in your body that carries oxygen, count is between 9.5 and 15. When we took her to the OR, her hemoglobin was 3.1. In the ICU after, it was down to 2.6. I remember talking to her before going to the OR, and all she could do was lie flat in bed. If she did so much as lift her head, her heart rate would jump from about 130 to 180, and she started having chest pain. I also had to tell her A, that I didn't know if she would live through the surgery, and B, that I wasn't sure how much of an anesthetic I would be able to give her. So there was the possibility she might remember some of the procedure. Fortunately, she did survive and didn't have any recall. If she wasn't otherwise young and healthy, I am sure she would have not survived. Opinion. I thought their reasons were based on several Bible verses that specifically refer to eating blood. But when getting a transfusion, you're not actually eating blood, right? Story 8. I work with a dude that has a family history of heart disease. Not many males in his immediate family branch reach past the age of 60. This man only has one vice: food. I've seen him in action. At one point, his caloric intake was over 10,000 calories a day. It's almost obscene how many burger meals and giant tubs of soda he puts away in a day. I don't know the count, but when he does need to see a doctor, they always marvel at how he is still alive with his blood pressure so high. He's been told more than once that he should be unalive. Edit. Even more surprising, he is not obese. He is pudgy, and has that dead belly, but not enormous. He is certainly a wonder. Opinion, that's truly heartbreaking. Ending yourself slowly by harming yourself with food. Reminds me of that movie The Whale. Story 9. Not a doctor. Friend who's a crime scene tech. They apparently tell this story to the police now, to remind them that unless somebody is 100% utterly unalive, like a head 20 meters away from the body, call the ambulance. Police rock up to an address of a couple of addicted people. Enter and it's a mess. Mattress at the center of the living room and blood everywhere. Cannot reach the mattress without stepping on it. Spray on the walls and ceiling. 2 bodies on the mattress, both covered in blood. Cops have to go around and enter through the back door, just to get near them without messing up the scene. Cops check, but no signs of life. Call detectives who arrive and start investigating the scene. About 1 hour into it, one of the bodies takes a deep breath and starts to move. For some reason, no one decides to use a long-distance hole puncher on what was obviously a zombie. Turns out they got high and decided to end it all. Only one didn't succeed and just had a really strong nap. And that's why the police in my state can't issue life extinct certificates unless they are looking at a over 3-year-old skeleton. Opinion. Life extinct certificate has got to be the most metal thing I've read today. Story 10. Paramedic here. I ran a call on a guy that was ejected out of a late 80s Mustang. The guy said the car rolled 2 times before pitching him out of the driver's side window. He said he landed on his head and the 7-inch scalp avulsion seemed to corroborate with his story. The car was completely crushed and sitting on its top. The guy wanted to refuse treatment and transport. Glasgow coma scale 15 and never lost consciousness. I insisted though that he be seen at the ER. He rolled the whole way texting people. When I told him that he shouldn't be alive, he said, "Yeah, I got a hard nugget." Opinion. He wasn't wrong. Story 11. Not a doctor, but when I was 18, my mom was at a stoplight when she was rear-ended by a diesel truck going 60 miles per hour. Her back was broken and her brain was bleeding. At the hospital, her kidneys started to fail. She had internal bleeding and her blood pressure was in the 20s. The doctor told us these facts and told us to say goodbye. A priest was there and offered her last rites. The next day she was stabilized and I can remember the doctor looking at her like, "How is this even possible?" Opinion. I guess Dr. House did a pretty good job. Story 12. Do I need to say not a doctor at this point? I feel like it's a given. When I was in 9th grade, a friend of mine got into a car wreck. It was a car full of teens in the middle of the day. There were no injuries, but one of the parents insisted that all of them go to the doctor and get x-rays. Mind you, these are lower class people in a podunk town in the podunk state of Kansas. So the fact that someone felt strongly about this and they all took it seriously is a miracle in itself. All she had to do at any point was tilt her head up, sneeze, whatever, and she would be instantly unalived. It's just insane thinking about it. They put her in a halo and she healed and was fine. Opinion. I'm surprised she was able to stand, let alone walk, with a neck that messed up. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and activate the bell button to receive notifications to my latest videos.